Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Retro Brothers. My name is Dave.
And my name's Andrew.
How are you today?
Yeah, not too bad. Just trying to get used to the gloomy dark nights now in the UK.
Yeah, it's not good, but it gives us plenty of time to play around with tech and do things that we like instead of
Yeah,
going outside and walking.
yeah,
Play
or
with
to
some
get
nice
out.
projects.
Yeah,
So,
certainly can.
we're going to talk about a few things. The new Raspberry Pi 400, the ZX Spectrum Next is rearing its head again in our second episode, purely because it looks like there's some more for sale by the sound of things. We're going to talk about Pi Hall and how that's gone with me, and then you're going to talk about some more emulation with the Spectrum Next C version versus the C64 and emulation on PC and Raspberry Pis.
Yep.
Sounds good. Okay, so I've got a new friend. Ta-da!
Raspberry Pi 400.
The 400.
Yeah.
Some nice ports at the back.
Does that look exactly like the Raspberry Pi keyboard then? Have they
That I
just
think
used
that
the same?
is, I
Yeah.
believe that is a Raspberry Pi keyboard, and they've customized it. They've gone to the next level. And they've taken this and they've put in the Raspberry Pi in there, but they haven't just stuck a Raspberry Pi in there. They've
No, it's a new board.
it is. So what they've done is, if you can see at the back, that you've got three USBs, two USB 3s, one USB 2. You've got a gigabit LAN. You've got USB-C power. You've got two mini HDMI's. You've got the SD card, and you've got the exposure to the pins. So you don't have to break into it to do your favorite projects, plug in your camera or anything else you're doing there. So that's pretty. It's got some weight to it. It's not too light. So when you're tapping away on the keyboard, you don't feel like it's going to move around much. It sits there and it sits there quite well. So
Yeah.
it's not a bad piece of kit. I've got it this week. So what I'll do is I'll have a play with it and come back to you with what it can do, what it can't do. This has come preloaded with the Pi OS, Raspberry Pi's own OS. So I'll play with that, and then what I'll do is you can actually the difference between this one and a few of the others. I don't know whether it's Raspberry Pi 4 that allows it or it's this particular version. You can boot from the USB. Now, previous versions I've played with, you couldn't boot from the USB, or
You
certainly you had to mess with it to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna maybe put Ubuntu and a few others on there, maybe Manjaro, and just see how they work. So I will do some performance tests, and I'll do a review next week of the Raspberry Pi 400. I love it because it's a computer and a keyboard. It's how we used to have it. That's a computer.
Isn't it? So
Specs
how
on it are
much did you get?
ridiculous.
Did you get the kit version?
So I got
Or
the
did you
kit.
just...
So you're roughly between 90 to £100 for the entire kit. So that gives you the Raspberry Pi itself. It gives you the SD card. It gives you the mouse. In fact, I've got the mouse. It's not anything special. It is literally just a branded optical basic mouse, but it's all right. It's not bad. It's the cable's a little bit too short for me, but that's just me. And you get the latest Raspberry Pi sort of guide, beginner's guide, which it's the fourth edition, so that's fairly new. So I'll go through that because that's some great stuff in there. I mean, there's stuff I didn't really know about Raspberry Pi, what's on them, and I have seen my kids play with Scratch and do programming and things. But it'd be good to have a look through to see what there is there and see what's on the new OS. So we'll have a play with that, and next week I'll tell you how good it is. But it'd be nice for a little desktop replacement, a bit of kiosk or maybe a little server in the corner where you can just get access to keyboard straight away. I'll have a
Yeah.
play and see where we go with that.
I was thinking, what did the box look like? By the way, I'm curious. Did it? Is it?
So
Is
the
it
box
like?
it came in.
Yeah.
So it came in with a nice branded box. It's all in reverse, but it really doesn't matter for this. But yeah, nice branded box. I did an unboxing. I'll put a link in show notes if anyone wants to see that. What you actually get in the package. It's a quick 7-minute basic video of just me unloading all the stuff that you get. But you can get the Raspberry Pi itself on its own, the 400, for about 60 quid, $70 thereabouts, that sort of price. But by the time you get to an online supply, it might be a little bit more or less depending on where you're paying for it. But there's plenty in stock. I've got a sleeve. I haven't got the sleeve with me. It's on its way. The sleeves seem to have gone out of stock more than the Pi 400s, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll do a review on that. So next up we've got ZX Spectrum Next. There's more. We can buy more.
Yeah, I sent you the email yesterday. Your last chance, Dave, to get one. Yeah, I keep plugging it. But yeah, if you got, so I got an email the other day about it because obviously I've got the I backed the second campaign, Kickstarter 2. But obviously I got an email with a quick update. They've got the so it's revision C on the boards now that they've had back. Now going through them. Now on the revision C, they've sort of looked at sort of changing or just refining it a little bit to make it a little bit quicker. A couple of bugs that they've sort of removed that was in the original board, so it's going to be more refined. Is the board? It's not going to change or anything. It's just they're making it a little bit more. The company that's doing it, they just obviously learned how to do it a little bit better. But by doing that, they've got the Spectrum Next back in stock. So if you go to spectrumnext.com and go into their shop, you will be able to order a Spectrum Next for a limited time.
I'll put that in the show notes, but that's good news. What sort of price are you looking at?
So you're looking at, for a normal one, ZX Spectrum Next plus computer, so it's £300. Or for the accelerated version, it's £325.
And what's the accelerated give you? What's the advantage? I mean, obviously, I presume it's faster speeds, but
next, so it includes the accelerated board, real-time clock with Wi-Fi. It obviously comes with the Raspberry Pi Zero as well. That's for an extra £25.
Well, when these things finally arrive, you can do a review on that. I'd be interested to see what that thing looks like and how it performs. See what you can do with it.
Yeah, exactly. And the difference is this time as well, which they've not. So they're bringing out some branded covers for it as well. It was going to be a stretch goal, but the manufacturer they were using at the time, they were pretty crap, to be honest. So they've gone to a new manufacturer who's done the colour handbook. So there's a new colour handbook. They're doing that in colour. And they were impressed with the results when that came back. So they've obviously then done the SD card, which is branded. That's now in colour instead of black and white. But they've also got some covers made. But obviously that they didn't release that as a stretch goal, so you have to buy that. So they're going to be available as well. So yeah. But it doesn't actually say how many's in stock. They're just going to be available for a limited time. I would say they won't be available after Christmas because that's when they're doing the manufacturing run in January. So if you want to buy a ZX Spectrum Next, they're both available, and from their store, £300.
Get yourself a copy of the past. It's a great little idea, great project. Support them.
You need to order one yourself.
I do. You can buy me one for Christmas.
Listen, I had to cheat and buy my own.
But get it before it runs out. I mean, I don't know how many more runs they might do with this. It's potentially the last run, but if it's successful, maybe they'll do some more in the future and refine it. Who knows?
Yeah, I think so. So obviously the original people that's done this, they're not interested in taking it into a third Kickstarter. I think so. Certainly one of the interviews I heard, sort of with the original creator, basically said that if somebody else wants to take on a project beyond the Kickstarter 2 for next year or beyond, then they're quite welcome to it. But I think they're probably going to start looking and probably at maybe another project
Maybe a
Soon
nice
enough.
C64 or something like
Yeah,
that.
we might see a
It'd be good
proper
to see.
Commodore
It'd be good
64.
to
Yeah,
see.
yeah,
Excellent. Look forward to seeing that when it comes out, and hopefully I might back myself one. So we got
yeah.
next up, uh, Dell are introducing some code into the Linux kernel. So for anybody who worries about privacy on a laptop from Dell, and they put Linux on it, generally speaking, you have to fudge around and just play around to try to switch off that camera or the microphone, and obviously privacy. Everyone's interested in privacy these days, and malware and anything else. So they're introducing some code into there that essentially is a kill switch, which I think is fantastic news. So it's going to be for the webcams and the microphones, and it should enable people to disable the Dell system webcam and microphone with keyboard shortcuts, which is fantastic news, I think. The only problem with that, because it's in the user land, so it's something that you can do as a user, it does mean that perhaps malware or something else could get in there and attempt to switch it back on, but that'd be an interesting thing. So privacy is good. Dell are being nice to the Linux users out there and helping them out, so I like that. That's nothing but good news for everybody. I like that. Now then, the Xbox. Everyone knows about the Xbox Series X coming out, and I'm sure people are attempting to try to pay a lot of money for ones that people have bought and put on eBay, but we'll talk about in a second. So people have been attempting to work out what spec you would have to do in terms of putting together a PC to get that lovely 4K experience that you're going to get on the Xbox. And frankly, because it's a custom-made chipset, you're going to struggle to do that. But it is based on AMD's cores, so it's not totally out of the realms of attempting to make a PC with similar specs. Basically, there's rumours out there that if you want to make a gaming PC that has the same performance as these Xboxes, you're talking more than what we're talking is about 400, £500 if you're lucky to get one at that price at the moment. You're talking more money than that. I mean, the graphics cards alone on gaming PCs, they're demanding so much more money to get 4K gaming. I mean, we're looking at a decent spec. 4K. It's got fast SSD, one terabyte. It's going to be a decent piece of kit. It's going to be a serious contender. So those people out there who like to say PC master race, you've got a battle with this piece of kit. You've got a battle. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. It depends how much. I mean, I've seen the specs, and the specs look good. It depends, because the only thing is with consoles sometimes, and Microsoft have done that, is they are, the specs at the time are brilliant, are decent, but the thing is the specs then don't change. So they've obviously been developing this for a while now, and I do know that the graphics capabilities in it had been revised to the original specs, which is good to see. Whereas normally they just keep with the original specs, and no sooner as it's out, with 6 months' time, something superseded it in PC, as a PC. But yeah, I just hope the longevity of it is more than the Xbox One X, because I think that definitely only came out for 2 years, and that's got a much improved processor and graphics. The amount of teraflops it can do is certainly much higher than the Xbox One S, which it looks like when you look at the lineup, they're continuing. So it sort of doesn't make sense, really. You'd think in this day and age, everything would be, let's just stick with 4K on everything.
Yeah, you'd be
I mean,
surprised the amount of people on the PC world that still do just full HD. Even I don't have a 4K display. Card can do 4K, but I just don't really feel the necessity at the moment to push it to 4K. I'm just happy with full HD at the moment, but there are plenty of people out there. Let's face it, 4K TVs are becoming the norm.
yeah,
And where do you plug your console in? It's not monitors we're talking about here. We're talking about TVs. People got 4K TVs. So, yeah. Are we going to be talking about, I wonder, on release of some of these games being maybe full and upscaled to 4K? Are we going to see
Yeah, I mean,
full
obviously, there's the
4K?
New Spider-Man game but I think a lot. I've got a feeling a lot of them are upscales at the moment. The majority are. I've seen some people or some reviews and some people saying at the moment, yeah, great, it's out, but there's not, there's not a lot yet for the, it's going to take. You look at the, even the PlayStation. When the PlayStation 3 came out, the developer said it was one of the hardest consoles to develop for. So they made a mistake that the way they did that console. But the only issue, while a lot of the developers basically said in 3 years' time that they're only just getting to grips with the full capabilities of the machine. 3 years later, and I think that's the case sometimes with all consoles. The developer kits. I'm sure the game studios don't. I'm sure they don't get them years, or a year in advance. So they've only got a certain amount of time to develop. So I think it's probably going to be another year before you see a few decent games and worth getting or upgrading from certainly the Xbox One X for certain, and even the Xbox One S, to be honest. But then again, there's people that have to have it on day one.
Yeah, there's always going to be people on day one. There's going to be the streamers who want to stream the newest consoles. There's going to be people who just have to have that first one, which leads on to the next article. You found something on eBay?
Yeah, so there's a news article on the BBC website where so the Xbox Series X console has been sold on eBay, or there's one that's sold for up to £5,000, which absolutely staggering. Why anyone cannot wait to spend five? They've obviously got money to burn, but so I've had a look. So I've gone on eBay, and okay, the average price is about £900, £800, but there's actually one on here for three. I'm just having a look now. Where is it? Don't tell me it's sold. £3,700 with 22 bids. But they're offering free postage.
Well,
But yeah,
that's a bonus.
£3,700 with 6 days to go. An Xbox Series X console, 1 terabyte, new. £3,700.
3,700. I mean, actually, I think we should do an article for next week, and we should say let's look at a 3,700 gaming PC rig and put together the specs for that. That's assuming you can get the graphics cards, because graphics cards at the moment are like rocking horse in terms of finding any stock. Certainly the high-end ones, like the 3080s.
Let's have a competition then. Let's see who can spec the best PC for, and you've got a budget of £3,700.
3,700. Let's see whether it's going to be easily a
And
console beater.
we'll go through the builds, and let people tell us which they think's best.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Let's do that.
The rules: you can't use anything that's coming out. You can only use hardware that's come out.
Yeah. So you go on and just configure. Yeah,
Sounds good to me. Okay. Well, good luck to the people who are going to bid on that and enjoy your new Xbox. So the next one is just a very small sort of snippet. I've been using the Nvidia Broadcast. So it's a little program you download, and it will work with the newer graphics cards. It uses a tiny little bit of the CPU, like the GPU cycles, and it allows you to remove background noise whilst you're broadcasting through your microphone, and also the camera. I'm just tipping my head left and right, and it's tracking my head using AI, I believe. If I were to, in fact, if I do this while we're recording, on my microphone at the moment, I've got noise removal. So if I just tap away on the keyboard, I've got a mechanical keyboard, so it can get really loud. You might hear something, but probably not much. If I just turn off the noise removal, this is all automatic. There you go, and I turn that back on. So automatically it's creating a virtual microphone and it's removing the noise. You can have it on different strengths. I've got on the highest because this keyboard's so noisy.
So I take it he's using AI also for the audio, so it's looking at
Yeah,
those frequencies and removing them.
I honestly don't know, and I'm happy to sort of do a full review. There's not much to it, but there's
Yeah,
literally 3 pages in the app. You just say noise removal, what strength you're going to do it. You can actually apply it to your speakers as well. So if we use OBS for recording audio and video, or videos just purely for our benefit for the moment. And with that, I can mess around with the speaker output as well, so I can remove it. I could remove it on both sides. So if you're doing monitor of your desktop audio, you can remove it there as well, which is great because if you're talking, I can remove your background noise as well, in theory. But I've also got the tracking, which tracks your head, and you can have it blur the background, and little bit like Zoom does at the moment, but it's supposed to be more and more advanced. The camera part is beta at the moment, but the microphone part and the speakers side is fully sort of fully fully there and ready to use. But the camera is beta, so it's a bit it's a bit okay at the moment. So they'll keep adding more features. This is perfect. You can just have it running in the background, set your settings, and away you go. I shall
yeah,
put a
interesting.
link.
So does that work on most hardware, or is that just
I believe it's the RTX
yeah,
Nvidia cards, although I believe they've added in that you can try it on the older cards and it may work, but yeah, there's no guarantee. I would assume on the older cards it's going to start really pushing the GPU cycles up and probably affecting gaming. So this shouldn't affect gaming or encoding, hardware encoding that I'm doing right now, or if I were broadcasting some gaming, like I don't know, MSFS or Microsoft Flight Simulator, it shouldn't affect it in any way. I'll test that, and if you like, I can come back next week and I'll tell you whether it actually affects gaming in any which way.
interesting. Yeah.
Mm. So there we go. That's the news for this week. So we're going to go on to talk about the Pi-hole, the ZX Spectrum Next versus C64 emulation on the PC and Raspberry Pi. So next we're going to talk about Pi-hole. I talked about it last week on the demo episode, as it were, or whatever you want to call it, pilot episode. Um, so I mentioned that I'm going to install Pi-hole onto a Raspberry Pi, and this is going to block domains that are there for advertising, and hopefully when I look at a website, we're not looking at as many adverts, and you can block it on your mobile and everything else. So anything using Wi-Fi. So what's Pi-hole? Pi-hole is a DNS server for your local network. So all you do is you can have Pi-hole take over DHCP. So if you turn DHCP off on your router, you can have the Pi-hole do the DHCP, and obviously that then gives itself back as a DNS. Pi-hole then just every time you make a request, it checks it, and if it finds a domain that it needs to block, it blocks it. If it's something that's whitelisted or it's okay to allow through, it just puts it through. So on my screen, you can see like a little dashboard. You got your like how many domains you've got. So since I've been using Pi-hole, so how many weeks since our test pilot? Is it 2 weeks?
Yeah, two.
Two
Yeah, 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks. Pi-hole has blocked on 3 test machines 201,000 domains. So that's a lot of traffic that otherwise would have been downloaded onto my network, onto my screen, onto my machines. So be it video or I don't know, a nice bit of static text or anything really you see, or on your mobile where you get a video ad in between your levels. So that's a lot of data that otherwise would be going onto my screens and to my devices, which is a lot, isn't it? 201,000. Um, so on the Pi-hole, you've got a little login, so I'll just log in for you, for your benefit, Andy, because you can see my screen. So when you log into Pi-hole, you get a nice dashboard. Like I say, it tells you how many domains blocked, how many queries. So I've got 4 computers at the moment connected up. You've got nice little charts of how many queries over the last 24 hours. what query types you've got. So whether it's A record or quadruple or serve or PTR records, don't worry about those. They're just type of domain requests. And then queries answered by, so what's been blocked, what's cached. So the great thing about this is once it's got, say you go to BBC Co UK, it caches that up. So it saves that so it doesn't have to query out to the next set of DNSs. You've got what the top permitted domains are, so you can see mine are pretty boring actually, to be honest with you. Most of it's Linux and other stuff. And then you've got top blocked domains. So top one at the moment, interestingly, is Mozilla. So Mozilla's got an incoming .telemetry.mozilla.org, and that's one of the highest hits. So that's seen as a. So although it blocks ads, it'll also block anything that's tracking you. Some people might be happy for Firefox to give out information like Chrome does and all the others, but it's good to have that blocked. And then it shows you that what clients are connecting, what clients are blocked, and then you can go in and, like for example, there I can see the query log. So these are the last few domains that were blocked or were okay. You can click to blacklist it, so you've got on a list. So you've got long-term information, so you can go into graphics, look at the query log for over last month, which is great. So you're over the last 30 days. You can put in domains that you want to block completely, or you can say, I want to specifically whitelist it. I mean, it goes on and on, as you can see there, in terms of what you can do. It's just a fantastic little tool. So in terms of how successful it is, it's a bit of a 50-50. So I want to get rid of any plugins on my browsers. I want to get rid of the block adders because I find they reduce the affect performance on your browser. So I wanted to get rid of that and have pie hole, fill that hole as it were, pardon the pun, and say, right, that's it. Pi-hole blocks all the adverts. I can remove the plugins, and I don't have to worry about performance hit on my browser. It's not the case. It's not the case, unfortunately. Um, what you've effectively got is about 50-50. And so if you went onto Twitch and you went onto a popular broadcaster and normally you get a bit of an advert. I don't know if you've been on Twitch, you get a little bit of an advert and it goes towards the broadcaster. Well, that can get annoying after a while because every time you refresh the screen, if they're having issues, you sometimes get the ad again. It doesn't block it. I can go onto YouTube. It's a bit of a hit and miss. I go onto certain videos, and on those videos, I get I'll stop the share on that because there's not much else to show. You get sometimes an ad, and sometimes you don't. And obviously, with YouTube, once you've had an advert play, it doesn't always play the next one on the next video, but it doesn't block it. And the reason being is the video for the domain it's coming from also has the ad in it. So if you've got like an overlay with an ad or something like that, and it's a separate domain to YouTube, yeah, fine, it'll block it. But if you get a video with it it embeds the ad into the video that you're watching, it doesn't block it. Whereas an ad blocker plugin will block it still. So how the plugin works and how the Pyol works, it's obviously not just purely on a DNS record. So it does reduce. If you go into like Daily Mail or something like that, and it looks like something from the 90s where you've got adverts lined all the way down, you don't get anything like that.
Oh, newspaper, the electronic versions of newspapers are the worst.
They're
I
awful.
got sort of Birmingham Mail, not because I live in Birmingham, but more to do with football and stuff. But yeah, the local newspapers are absolutely work. Like you say, yeah, it's like websites from the 90s. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It is. So if I hopefully you can still see my browser. If I go to
Yeah.
Daily Mail, if I do a Control F5, just a flush, hopefully. Yep, there you go. That's slightly better. Yeah. So you can see there's a massive speed difference between the two. Unfortunately, this podcast isn't yet video, so this section will be a little bit more boring for some people. So it's pretty good. It does work. But browsers don't always play well with it, so you gotta flush DNS, which is sometimes normal anyway. I like it because you can see your stats. I can see what's been blocked. I can see what's been requested. Sometimes I see a domain name that I know is an ad domain and it's not being blocked because it's not on the list. So what this system does is it goes out there and looks for popular lists and downloads them as ad domains. I can just add them on as well and blacklist them. So for the moment, I'm going to leave it on test. I'm not going to put it on full time on my network. Performance, I'm on I think it's a Raspberry 3 or maybe 2. I'm running this on. It was easy to image. You just download the image, you put it on the SD card, it boots up, it goes through a setup process, and you just in and you just create your login. Decent tool, it's web-based. It does block a lot of ads, but if you use it in combination with a plugin, I'm hoping I can get just so where the performance on the browser isn't affected as much when it's not blocking so many ads. So I'm going to keep testing it. It's good. It's not perfect. I was hoping for a little bit more. Certainly on YouTube, I wanted YouTube to completely be wiped in terms of ads. It doesn't do it. Twitch, the same, doesn't do it. I need to find out how it works. Maybe you can't because it's streaming from the same domain, the video, and they're embedding the ads in there.
Yeah, probably are out there. It's true because that's another thing. I don't know if you've noticed in the last 6 months, the amount of ads on YouTube, the ads tripled.
It's ferocious, and you know what, everyone has to monetize and everyone has to make money out of what they're doing, and I get it, but it gets to a point where you've got 2 or 3 stacked up when you're waiting to. I mean, I have actually clicked on ads on YouTube. I've seen an ad and I've gone, oh, okay, that seems interesting. And I have done it once or twice, so it does work for people, but you don't need 3 or 4 stacked up or 2 stacked up or whatever it is sometimes you get. It's just not necessary. So I get the monetization, but you should better skip them.
Yeah, certainly. Not these where you have to watch. You're watching a 2-minute. You're forced to watch 2 minutes of an advertisement before you can do anything.
You've got a countdown and you've got to press. Yeah. So I get it, but it's too much, and I'm going to be leaving the plugins on my browsers for now. But in combination with both, you just don't get any ads. You just get nothing. I want to eventually get rid of these plugins, so I'll keep you updated. It's a good system. It's easy to install. It's well worth doing it. If you've got a Raspberry Pi lying around, I'm sure you must have, Andy, somewhere on your shelves. You must have a Raspberry Pi.
I've got 3. I've got 2 and a Raspberry Pi Zero, which I'll talk about what I'm doing with the Raspberry Pi Zero shortly.
Get one used. Get it on. It doesn't affect performance on new browsing websites. It just improves it, and if it removes the occasional ad and makes it easier, and a bit of privacy as well. So you're not using the ISP DNS anymore. You're using your own. There you go. So next up, you're going to talk about ZX Spectrum Next again, but versus the C64 emulation PC, Raspberry Pi with RetroPie, and the FPGA open architecture.
Yeah. So obviously, as you know, I've pledged and supported the Kickstarter 2 and got an X coming. Last year for Christmas, my wife got me the C64. I've got a BBC Micro, which I'll talk about in a moment down there, and I've obviously, as you know, I've got some Raspberry Pi 3s. One's got RetroPie on, emulation station, and lots of emulations. And I just started looking at and they're all different. Every single one of them's different. So it's sort of the thing is, which is the best? Because people do open them up. They want to know what's inside them. So for instance, the Sinclair Spectrum Next, it's on a full board, but it is based on FPGA technology. So it's basically it is an FPGA. It's just got a Z80 processor.
Okay, so in terms of
processor.
the FPGA, I knew nothing about this. Do you want to just sort of like briefly give us an overview of what FPGA
Yeah, so
is?
basically, FPGA is basically, well, it stands for Field Programmable Gate Array. So it's basically you can program a car on a chip, and that's basically what it is. So you standard chip. So it's not like the Intel where it's a standard chip and that chip is what it is. It's basically it's integrated circuits. So you get your CPU and there's integrated circuits within that CPU, and those integrated circuits are what you can program.
So it's almost like a programmable CPU to then emulate the Z80s or Z81 processors.
So you can program what you want on it. So you can program, obviously, it's programmable logic gates. So you can program memory. You can program a CPU. There's different things that you can program using it, and so it's fascinating because I've noticed. So FPGA, it's not come up. I've seen it obviously with emulation, but I've also today seen a video. So going into music, so synthesizers. There's a synthesizer out called the UDO6. And the UDO6 uses FPGA-based technology to create the oscillators. So it's like a digital analog hybrid, but the digital side is basically FPGA technology. So in there, they've programmed basically oscillators on a chip. So it's very powerful. Apparently, you can do a lot with it. So it is open architecture. So obviously, the Spectrum Next is based on FPGA, but it is a full system board. So what they've done with it separately is they've got separate memory, separate modules on a logic board for all the other elements, and it is, all intents and purposes, it looks like a Spectrum. So if you've seen it, it does look like a Spectrum 128, and it is obviously what they've tried to do is emulate. This is what the next model of the Spectrum would be. So you get it in its package. The package looks like a Spectrum. It comes with the manual, and it's just a bit like your Raspberry Pi 400. It's you get that experience. The C64 is slightly different. The C64 is software emulation. It's not on a chip, so it's software emulation. And if you see a teardown of the C64, the case is basically empty. You've just got what looks like a Raspberry Pi. It isn't a Raspberry Pi, but what looks like a Raspberry Pi right in the corner, and it is basically software emulation. Now they do say FPGA-based emulation, so because it goes down, it's based on hardware and it's emulating hardware within hardware on a chip, then you do get better, accurate emulation, and there's certainly no lag.
One sort of word in there I like, in terms of when you put this in the show notes, open source architecture.
Yeah.
So I'm presuming from that then, it's
there's a GitHub. So if you go onto GitHub now, you'll find loads of. So there's another one called Mister, MISTER FPGA. So if anyone wants to go and Google that, and there's actually a GitHub page, and basically you can build a piece, not a PC, but you can build basically a computer based on sort of Mister, and you can actually download and put your own FPGA cores on the chip and turn it into whatever you want to do. So they've emulated everything's on GitHub, You go on there, there's loads of cores. Now, interestingly enough, the next on their website is that just it does say it is multiple multiple FPGA core support. So you can actually, so what it tells you to do on the, so the next is basically, it boots up using an SD card. But if you create a directory in there called machines, and for argument's sake, BBC Master, create one, and you basically can download the core and put it in there, write a little bit of config, and you can turn your Spectrum Next into a BBC Micro.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
But it's FPGA based, so it's not emulated by software. It's emulated by right to the CPU, to the core, because it's a core that you're putting on the chip.
I like things like this. You know, if you got some sort of proprietary board and they're flashing it and you can't really play with it, yeah, you know, projects like this don't work out very well. You know, you can't do much with it. All you can do is play games, which is great in itself. But the fact that you're saying that I can take one of these and I can mess with it and then turn it into a, I don't know what, C64 or...
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly, because obviously what they've done certainly for the Spectrum Next is the way that, because it is all intents and purposes a Z80 chip in there, you can plug in Spectrum based hardware, so it will support it. Even the joystick ports on the front are all intents and purposes, I think, the Kempston joystick and the I think the Sinclair interface too, I think. But it's hardware, it's not software.
So it believes it's a Z80 or Z81.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you well, it's actually a new version of the Z80 chip. You know, so it's a different version. It's not the original. It's a slightly different version. But there's no latency whatsoever, or none that you'll see, and it's 100% obviously accurate. Whereas emulation, certain things don't work. It's harder to do. You know, anyone can bring up an emulator on a PC, for instance. There's absolutely tons of emulations for PCs, for Macs, but RetroPie, for instance, you know, you can download an image with loads of ROMs on there. But again, it's software, and you see that lag on some of them.
Yeah. I mean, certainly when I put the that particular distro on a Raspberry Pi for my arcade machine I built, there's latency in there. There's definitely latency in there. I mean, obviously, if I upgraded the Raspberry Pi to something a little bit more powerful, it would probably be better. But yeah, hardware level emulation, I mean, that's just a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
It's open source. I like that. That sounds pretty decent.
So it is. It's a little bit harder to do, but you know, there's a lot of configuration you can do on it, and I'm sure a lot of people would actually love to learn how to program onto a chip. So I think it's interesting. So if people want to look at it's at the Google Mr. FPGA and GitHub, there's a hell of a lot of resource on there. It's very interesting, but there's actually an interesting page on the SpectrumNext.com website, which basically tells you about the multiple FPGA core support.
I'll put the links in the show notes so people can have a look at those sites. Yeah. But there's some looking through the website. There's some fantastic looking information.
So obviously you've got your. I mean, you've got your RetroPie, not RetroPie. You've got your Raspberry Pi 400.
Yeah.
And obviously you've got that all-in-one computer experience, as you know you used to get on the 8-bit and 16-bit computers. But obviously it's still software, but you've still got that experience as such. But you know, what do you think? You know, there's people who obviously go out and buy the original hardware, and because they feel that's what it needs. You know, there's the Spectrum Next, or there's people, you know what, I'll just have a Raspberry Pi. But for me, yeah, the Raspberry Pi is okay, but I get bored easily with that. It's like, right, I've played on a few emulations now, I'm not interested, but I've got a particular piece of hardware that's doing that, like the 400, where you'll probably get that experience. You're probably going to do a lot more with it, I think.
I think sometimes it
Certainly with
feels,
next, you know,
yeah,
you look at that community that they've got now for the Spectrum Next people, you know, making games, programming games. It's fairly big, but the C64 not. I think it's you don't get that experience. It's just a plastic. It's, to me, in all intents and purposes,
it's
it's
just a box standard
it's
board
it's the
emulated,
case,
yeah,
yeah,
software.
with an emulator inside it. But I mean, to be honest, it looks good and it's great. But I was certainly disappointed when I opened it up and just saw, you know, a little all-in-one
So really,
system.
if you were to compare the two, you know, we've got the Raspberry
Yeah,
400. It's been custom made. They've spread the. I mean, when you look at the takedown videos, the teardown videos of these, you can tell it's obviously it is a Raspberry Pi, but
yeah,
they've redesigned the board purely for
yeah,
this. So it's custom made for this. It like you say, it isn't a keyboard. Well, all intents and purposes, where they've just thrown a Raspberry Pi inside, and it's good luck if you want to get access to certain ports, or they put some form of extender in there or something like that. So that is your Spectrum that you're going to be getting. You know, it's custom made, and that's what you want. You know, that's what you
yeah.
want, which is, you know, anybody could get a Raspberry Pi kit and put inside a keyboard and then send it out and say, there you go, there's your C64 using RetroPie or something else. So they've gone the next level up, and because of that, it's customizable. It's probably going to be faster. Um, it's a fantastic project. There's nothing to belittle the other projects like that C64 that you've got.
No,
Um,
they've all got the uses, you know, obviously. But if I'm picking up a physical thing, then would I want that, or would I want FPGA based, or would I want the original thing? Because it's the same thing, you know. People want the convenience, so they've got the software emulation. Whereas if I go in the corner now and rack out my BBC micro, put it on the desk, plug it in, do all the, you know, turn it on, it's a bit more of a setup, unless somebody's got a large room where they're already there. But
there is something to be
I think,
said though
yeah,
about having that real machine from the past,
yeah.
like the BBC Micro that you've got and a few that I have, and it's just firing them up and actually having that physical floppy disk, putting it in or cassette, and seeing how long it takes to load the game.
Yeah,
And you know, we had some of the older ST and Amiga games. You were like 4, 5, 6, 7 floppies,
yeah.
so you were swapping them out every time or for the entire game to load.
Well, the next actually emulates tape loading, so you can actually, so yeah, so you can actually get an image of an application or a game, and you can actually emulate the tape loading
So you could
of
be
it.
sadistic and
Yeah, well, you could be, yeah,
show a kid what it used to be like, and say this is how long we had to wait for a game, and sometimes it would crash.
yeah, or buy a tape recorder because you can.
Oh,
So you can buy a
right.
tape and play tape games because it does exactly the same, does exactly what the original Spectrum did.
Wow. So
So yeah,
you can plug in a cassette player, get your
yeah,
old cassettes that you might still have lying around if you're lucky enough, and you can just load it from a cassette player.
yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. So there's your difference between a Raspberry Pi or another board. Software emulating, you're able to get to as far as to be able to say, I can plug in a cassette player and it can directly access that hardware and work as if it was a real Spectrum. So
Yeah,
if you
because
can't
all
find
yeah,
one, that's the next
yeah,
best thing.
yeah.
I like that. That sounds good, and I can't wait for you to buy one because I'm not too sure whether I'll get a chance to buy one, to be honest.
I'm sure
But
you will. You've got a few weeks, yeah.
it'd be nice to see it. Pricing wise, I think you mentioned before, it's not too bad, is it? It's probably actually, if you think about it, if you're very lucky to find a Spectrum with all that kit and the games that you'll be able to have in terms of like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 games, all bundled, you're probably sort of talking the same price, if not a little bit more for a good condition. So the fact that you can get that and root around those boxes up in the loft and find an old game or two and play them and sit there for, what was it, 5, 10 minutes sometimes
Yeah.
for it to load.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can. Yeah, so I mean, you can, and obviously, yeah, it's clever as well. So it's not only a Z80 processor, but it's also, you know, it's got a turbo mode as well, so you can change the clock speed as well. So there's certain, I think there's some 3D games that you could get on the Spectrum, you know, probably Outrun, and fewer games like that, where on the original, you know, the original sort of speed, it wasn't brilliant, but it worked. But you can overclock it, so if you put it in turbo mode, that game will run brilliantly, smooth. You know, I've seen some videos on it, so you can change the clock speed. So that's so that'd be interesting on some of the games. But yeah, it's got, you know, it's certainly worth for the money.
What I like to see is, I want to see one of those projects one day where they've got one of these Spectrum Nexts and they've taken it and they've overclocked it based on however you do it with its software, and then overclocked it even more and found a way to overclock it to the point where it needs a water cooler. I want to see that project, because there must be somebody somewhere who's going to be able to do that. I want to see one of these Spectrum Nexts on a water cooler inside a case. If it's that good, and it's something that's customizable, someone somewhere's got to do that. I guarantee it. Just because, why can't you, and why shouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Yeah, but yeah, definitely. Yeah, the next. But yeah, going back to the BBC. So yeah, you can, like you said, the BBC. You can get the 5.25-inch disc drives. You can get the tape drives and everything. But I've searched and I've looked at, and you can actually mod and make it more modern. So obviously, my BBC. The person that sold me it found it in his loft. It didn't know. He thought it was brand new. I've got it. I've opened it up. It does look brand new, to a point. You know, it's from Cambridge. The guy was in Cambridge, so which is where Acorn was. But it's actually got no serial number on it. It's the blanket plate where the serial number should be is blank. So it's weird, really. But the yeah, so one of the things I have got for it is a micro SD interface, which plugs into the back of it. I'm trying to have a look. Yeah, so say if you open the link, it's just basically it plugs into the back of the BBC. It's basically a cable with an SD card reader on the end of it.
Nice, so you can load up plenty of games on there, and
yeah, you can, but because it comes, I don't know. So obviously, you know, so BBC's came with, you could put your own ROMs in, couldn't you? So
yeah,
to
expand them,
it, you know, word processors and different things. Well, one of the, you get a ROM with it, and what it does, it changes it into, so it thinks the SD card's a disk drive. So it gives its own disk drive OS, and it thinks it's a disk drive. So you have to put in the disk drive commands to get access to all the files on the SD card. And the one I got did come with a hell of a lot of software, which I'm not sure it should have done. But and it's easy. You just plug it into the back. It just plugs into the back, the interface in the back of the BBC. So yeah, so that's good. That works well. So you know, as you know, you can go to most websites, download ROMs, get some ROMs. Obviously, choose the ones that you've already bought, so you're licensed to use it. Put it on an SD card on your PC, transfer and plug it straight to the BBC, and away you go. You know, the convenience is there.
That's good. I like that. I mean, the fact that you can put an SD card into a BBC Micro is, you know, people are building these things, and you know, they're supposed to be obsolete pieces of kit, and no one's interested in them. But the fact that you can do that is just great. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And the fact it comes with a ROM, you know, to get you the disk operating system, and you know, I think I paid £19 for mine on eBay, brand new. There's different companies making them. I've just picked one here. You know, these are making different ones. You know, this one's 30 quid, but if you quickly scroll down, they're doing a lot of other stuff as well. But yeah, it's good because there's that, and then obviously The other thing that I've got, which I've not plugged in yet, so on the back of the BBC, there's what's called a tube interface. Now, the
Okay.
tube interface allows you to put a core processor in. Now, so the Z80 processor, for instance, were available for the BBC. It allowed you to put CPM on it. So if people wanted to use CPM as an operating system, you can do that. But this interface, PyTube Direct interface, is basically a Raspberry Pi Zero. So the Raspberry Pi Zero is emulating a processor. So as that is your core processor, so it's using ARM. Now, some people have put the Archimedes OS on that. But yeah, so it acts as a core processor. And I've not fitted that yet, so I'm not quite sure what to do with it. But yeah, that's going to be good. Again, the bottom one is the one that I've got. So if you scroll all the way down, there's some messy configurations. If you click on but this is GitHub. So this is resources on GitHub. You can do all sorts with a core processor with it, and there's a lot of projects. But Elite, so the BBC version of Elite runs with a core processor, and it runs really fast. So what it's doing is it's speeding a lot of the games up. Those that will work with a core processor. So again, using a Raspberry Pi, using latest technology to basically bring a machine from 1981 up to spec.
I'm just looking through this website, and there's something called Pan OS, which is Pandora. It looks like they've sort of built their own so they've got a bootstrap loader, and it logs into. Never heard of Pandora, but you've got welcome package. You've got a menu where you can go into Pascal and assembler, and yeah, it looks pretty good. That it's fantastic to see. You've got a command line prompt in there. I don't remember BBC's having command line prompts where you could do
I
DIR, and
think that's CPM into it. So
that's pretty decent. That.
But yeah, so it just uses the tube technology of the BBC, which were for its time were ahead of its time with that for 1981. Aircon. When you look at the specs of the BBC, because the BBC obviously it had to be broadcast quality, so they certainly said there were certain things that they had to have in it. So their monitor interface is crystal clear. So I've got obviously I don't have a BBC in monitor, so again I've got a converter which converts the monitor output of the BBC into HDMI, so I can use a monitor, but again it's using those signals. But yeah, well ahead of its time, and the fact that it's using the processor that Acorn basically created as a core processor, the ARM chip, which a lot of people don't know Acorn developed. It's good. So once I finish that project and got it in there, I'll probably update people on what I've actually done with it. But certainly, I certainly want to play Elite.
Yeah.
That'd be good. But there'll be some good stuff on that one.
That sounds good. Well, once you've had a play with that, you can update people, and that'll be pretty interesting to see how good it is. But very good. Well, that's it for this week. We should be releasing this every Wednesday morning or Tuesday evening, depending on your time in the world. And hopefully we'll have some more information on the Raspberry Pi 400 next week. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
See you next time.